Since this incident has been a long time ago, I cannot say with certainty what time we returned from Murgat crematorium. The whole city was invaded by black clouds, the sky was occupied by the lightning, and the thunder of the clouds was causing the doomsday in every direction. Those days I was staying away from my home country and parents, and I used to eat in hotels both times. For a living, I luckily got a flat on low rent, which was not far from the city. I used to take in rest a bit, and then going to the hotel to eat was my daily routine, but on the night I am talking about, seeing the bad weather, I did not dare to go out of the flat, so I stayed on the flat. With my hands prepared tea and drank it and picked up a magazine to pass the time and started studying it as I had drawn the window curtains to at least protect me from the lightning flash. It was not too late that someone called my name from outside. I could not recognize the voice due to the noise of thunder and lightning. However, I quickly closed the magazine and sat up before I reached the door. Naturally, I was disgusted by his behavior. I thought to remain silent for some time and let the person fight with the closed door for some time. Thinking that he might have come to inquire about my well-being, I hastened forward and opened the door. My idea was not proved wrong. Ramchand's face was full of confusion, his hair, which he was convinced to make with great effort, was looking scattered like bushes. Immense sadness was shining from the eyes. "Hello," I asked quickly, "you are looking a bit worried." "Yes," Ramchand said, and his tears came out, "Mother's death will happen." I was shocked to hear the news of his mother's death from the mouth of Ramchand. I was not sure that the good lady who was well until yesterday would die so soon. For a few seconds I was in a state of helplessness, then I quickly changed my clothes, locked the flat and left with Ramchand. There was no special conversation between us. I kept wondering how she died when she had no disease, and was in good health, and as far as I know she had no grief or worry that could be considered a cause of death. I was deeply shocked by this news, firstly because the deceased was the mother of my dear friend, and secondly, because she also loved me very much. Whenever I went to the deceased's house, she would treat me with great love and heart. She had been open and hospitable to me. The deceased insisted several times that I should leave the flat and come to his house, but I was never ready for it. In case of staying at Ramchand's house, I would have to abstain from the meat of cow, etc. While beef was my favorite food, well, whenever Ramchand or his mother asked me to stay at their house, I would make some excuse. But my excuse did not make any difference in our relationship. Ramchand's behavior towards me was always very friendly and sincere. His mother wanted me just like her own children. I had no complaints about any behavior of these mother and sons, but one thing that I particularly noticed about Ramchand's mother was her mysterious personality, although she was in every way a poor and prosperous person. The same conclusion could be drawn from her behavior that she did not have any financial problems, despite that I had always seen the deceased in strange and mysterious situations. Fasting every day and taking new steps, going to the Margat crematorium at midnight and chanting there and sitting at the head of pundits and priests and talking about secrets, all these things were beyond my understanding, but I used to explain them to Ramchand. There was no discussion about this issue with his mother, and I had no right to interfere in his private affairs. I was convinced by Noreen's words that she is very impressed with me, and will leave everything for my sake. So, as soon as he left, I also got down and quickly loaded my belongings on the taxi and left for the station. On reaching the station, I inquired about the cars, then bought a second-class ticket to Bombay and took the first car to my new destination. All this time, Daruka's snoring kept hitting my hearing. She was still sleeping on my head. I was happy that she was sleeping, otherwise, if she was awake, she would have forbidden me to go out. As had happened once before, after passing 2 or 3 stations, I took a long breath of satisfaction as I was now out of danger and beyond the reach of the police. I got into bed, changed my suit, and started reading Sulla, which I had bought from the station at the time of departure. It wasn't long after I was reading the magazine that I felt the magical girl whispering on my head. She was waking up. She changed her crotch a couple of times and then lay down on the bed and yawned for a long time. And after that she sat up with a long sigh. I was feeling her every movement. She was quickly closing her eyelids, and was looking out of the window. Then I felt that a mischievous smile appeared on his lips. Then she slowly came close to my ear and said, "How is Jimmy, sir? Where are you going?" "I'm going to hell," I shouted. "Hey, what's the matter with so much anger?" The fool that I am, I got angry and said, "I should dance as an expression of love. That you have provided a hanging noose for me." Hey, Daruka smiled and said carelessly that you are delusional and afraid of this incident. Daruka's indifference, and his attitude at the time, really poisoned me, thinking that he might be unaware of the situation. I told him the news published in the newspaper in a muffled voice. After listening to the whole story, Daruka addressed me in a cheerful tone. "Jimmy, why are you getting angry with me instead of accepting my favor? You have forgotten a big favor." Yes, I took a sip of blood from my throat and said, "What kind of favor have you done by killing an innocent person? It is not a miracle that Noreen herself met you. She assured you of her love and now she is ready to leave everything for your sake. Jamshet's thorn also came out because of me." I did not respond to Daruka's words. I was wondering how she came to know about Noreen's presence and the conversation between us. While she was sleeping, then who knows about all these things, I was shocked by my thought and said that Bombay is really a beautiful place. Daruka said while jumping with joy, "We both wish that there were great opportunities. Now you have to be a big man, Seth Jimmy." I had been in Bombay for 10 days, and I was concerned about the problems that a man faces in a new city. So, after getting down from Bombay station, I took a taxi and went straight to Taj Hotel, which is considered to be the biggest hotel in the city. For 3 days I stayed at the Taj. On the 4th day I went to Pune on Daruka's advice, which is the biggest race center in India. I had barely 700-800 rupees at that time. I spent 1200-1300 rupees, like water, within 3 days for the sake of external glory. I hoped that as long as Daruka's presence was on my head, I would not face any problem. So on reaching Pune, I made thousands in 1 day within the race. The horses told by Daruka made me rich in 1 day. When the race was over, I went back to Bombay. I spent that night at the Taj Hotel. The next day, Daruka advised me that now I should arrange a beautiful bungalow for myself. The advice of Daruka was exactly what I wanted. I contacted 2 or 4 brokers. And on the same day I bought a beautiful house and paid its price, and the next day I moved to a new bungalow. I was happy that the conversation which had caused some tension between us was resolved by itself. So I again started visiting Ramchand as before. Now I come back to that terrible night, the night when Ramchand suddenly told me the news of my mother's death, and I was speechless. However, when I reached his house with Ramchand, there was crying. Apart from the family, neighbors were also gathered. I was watching everyone like a silent spectator. A dear friend of Ramchand advised that instead of lifting the dead body in this terrible night, it would be more appropriate if it is arranged in the morning. But other people did not accept this advice and insisted on lifting the dead body at the same time. So, all the necessary rituals were completed quickly, and we went towards Margate. This was my first agreement to participate in the death of a Hindu. I was always confused by the terrible games of death and life anyway. So I tried to go back somehow to avoid Ramchand's eyes, but Ramchand kept clinging to me as if he had lost my heart. Had to go to where the pyre was ready before I looked at this pile of wood. Then I felt extremely afraid. The bad weather was becoming more dangerous every moment. I started praying to God in my heart that it would rain heavily, so that I could not see the body of Ramchand's mother burning in the flames. But despite the flash of lightning and the thick thunder of the clouds, there was not even a sign of rain in the distance. I had to see everything. The embalming priests started singing bhajans in a solemn voice, others got busy with the body's Kriya Karam. First, the body was placed on a pile of wood. The pulse became faster. If Ramchand had not held my hand earlier, I would have definitely run away from there. Unwillingly, I had to stay there till the end of these rites. The burning flames of the pyre were talking to the sky. The priests had also started singing the hymns with their throats open. The smell of kerosene and burning meat was spreading in the air. Chand's mother was forced and helpless on the dead body, which was surrounded by shoals. Suddenly, I saw the dead body standing up stiffly, and a scream came out of my throat. I had only one way to save myself, which was to close my eyes tightly. So I did so, and did not open my eyes until the chanting stopped. When I opened my eyes again, the pile of wood had turned into burning coals, and probably even the bones of Ramchand's mother had been burnt. On my return from Murkhat, I had to go to Ramchand's house, after which I reached my flat with barely a chance. Due to exhaustion, every joint of mine was looking like an abscess. The terrible scene of Murgat was still moving in front of my eyes. Locking the flat from inside, I took off my shoes, then turned off the light, and fell down on the bed, unconscious until morning. When I opened my eyes in the morning, the bell was ringing. I had to reach the office at exactly 9 o'clock, so I got up quickly, splashed water on my face, and quickly changed my clothes. Came down and had breakfast straight away at the nearby hotel and went to the office. My office was about a mile away from the flat. It was still 10 minutes before 9 o'clock, so I was sure that I would reach the office on time. Taking long steps, I was passing through a footpath of the big square when I felt as if something fell on my head. It was definitely something light. I raised my head and looked towards the residential flats, but by chance, no one was seen there. I shook my head and started walking again, but I had only gone a short distance when I felt as if an animal with sharp claws was walking on my head. I shook my head thrice, but in vain. It was only a short distance away that it felt like a false animal was biting its claws into the skin of my head. Once again I ran my hands through my hair, but I could not get anything. But the claws were still being chewed. Suddenly, I felt as if someone was walking on top of my head with small steps, sometimes forward, sometimes back. I felt as if someone had stayed on my head. I touched a small object a lot, but I could not see her anywhere, but I could feel every movement and touch of her body. But how is this possible? I was suffering from a strange conflict. This is my illusion, I am not seeing any dream. I was surprised and confused. I was really walking on the road, and it was neither a dream nor an illusion. There was someone on my head. Now that girl was taking curls on my head. My mind was very confused. What I had seen and felt was certainly a strange thing. How could it be possible that a girl could comfort me by spreading her hands and feet on my head? Then what was the thing that worried me? I became very nervous. I really want to throw all my hair out, but then on the street if I start doing something like that, the passers-by will think I'm crazy, and I'll become a spectacle. And then the thing that was sitting on my head began to step forward again. I could not understand anything about it. How could I deny my consciousness and feeling? Who was trying to convince me that there is a dream of a beautiful girl above my head? I tried to explain to my heart and quickly reached the office. The colleague, who came out from the next room, was shocked to see me and asked, "When did Jamie come? You are just sitting here." I tried to force a smile because my mind was still confused by this mysterious object, which was on my head, which I could neither see nor touch, but I could definitely feel it. "Attendance was not registered. You have already registered. Why did this happen?" replied my colleague. "If you had not signed the register, I would have advised you to quietly apply for leave and go back." I asked in surprise, why did you speak lastly? The thing is, my dear, that he has been asking you for an hour, but his mood seems to be a bit worse. Perhaps he has come from home after fighting and is very angry since morning, so he said carelessly in the air. I have reached my time. On time my partner stared at me and said, you have not started drinking. At that time it was 10 o'clock. I looked at my wristwatch and there were still 10 minutes left to 9 o'clock. Obviously my watch was off. After removing the wristwatch, I looked at the office clock, and it was a little faint. It was exactly 10 o'clock. I asked my colleague that you should go and ask yourself. Sir's order is that you should be sent inside as soon as you come. My companion said this, and went to another room, so I began to seriously consider why I was late. I remember very well that when I reached the hotel for breakfast, it was 8:30. And my watch was definitely running at that time. Barely 15 minutes had been spent in having breakfast. The way from the hotel to the main square was not more than 5 minutes. Then how come I was late for an hour? Suddenly I felt as if the sleeping girl on my head was waking up. If you don't believe it, don't do it, but it is a fact that I was watching him get up with the rolling pin. I felt every single movement of his body, because I was sitting alone in the room. So he suddenly raised his hand and hit the place where the unseen girl was sitting. But then I stood still. But then I stood up, not knowing what was the matter, that I felt as if she had moved to the other side of my head and was smiling secretly at my confusion. I trembled and shook my head 2 or 3 times, but the sting of the small and pointed claws remained in place. My heart wanted to hit my head against the wall with all my strength. But before I could complete my intention, he got angry and said, Sir, I am missing you. Okay, you go, I'm coming, I said to Pion while biting my lip. Then suddenly I brought the mirror close to my eyes, and started looking with tears in my eyes. I didn't see any beautiful girl in her. How come I still felt that she was lying on my head and smiling at my agitation? His manner was driving me crazy, but I managed myself and corrected the expression on my face and walked towards my officer's room. It was as dry as blood. On the face of the fat man who was my officer, I saw all the dangerous signs that would spell death for a mere 100-rupee clerk like me. I quickly spat out and cleared my throat, then greeted with fear. My heavily loaded officer looked at me with angry eyes, as if considering the possibility of being chewed raw. I was gone, that's why I couldn't come on time, for which I apologize. Mamfi Moat flashed his eyes and said, You are late all the time. It is wrong. I have been lying down for the first time in 7 months. I begged the officer. The gentleman looked at me, and then at once gave his final decision. Get out. My mind was already confused. Sir had given the order to resign from the job. I had to spend a lot of money in this new city for this job. My heart knew this, so I looked at him with pitying eyes and said, Sir, forgive me, it will never be too late, we don't want to hear anything, get out. The second time when he scolded me in a hateful tone, I bit my lip and my heart did not want me to request him any more. The tone in which he responded to my apology was very contemptuous. So I stared at her and was about to go out when the girl on my head started to feel like she was bringing her mouth near my ears. Then her mouth came near my ears. And for the first time I heard his whisper clearly. I trembled at the whisper, but was in front of Mr. If I had acted like that, there was a risk of getting the officer angrier. The girl on the head said, Don't be afraid, I am with you. Pick up a paperweight and hit it on your head. At the same time when these voices echoed in my ears, the claws on my head sharpened. I felt as if the girl named Nazak was shaking like me. Trim what our mouth sees. We told you to get out. The gentleman saw me standing and shouted and said, I wanted to go out, so hear the same voice again in my ears, Jimmy, as long as I am on your head, you will not be disturbed. Not required. Pick up this paperweight and bang the curtain on that fat man's head. The shock of going to work and the irony of the situation had paralyzed me to such an extent that I was unable to decide anything. Emerged, and he once again urged me to pick up the paperweight and hit it on my officer's head, so I quietly moved forward like a psychotic patient and picked up the paperweight and pulled it towards him. You believe that I had no involvement in this process. My intention came to me when I saw blood flowing from the head of my officer. After that, I did not stay there to see what happened and quickly opened the door and came out and walked towards my flat, taking long steps. I now had a strong feeling that I had committed the crime of beheading a person. If he dies, I can be hanged. Arriving at the flat, I hastily started packing my briefcase and immediately made the same program to leave the city for a few days and go somewhere else until the conditions were favorable for me. Stay the same. I was packing my stuff, and in my heart I was cursing this mysterious monster who was standing on my head even then and probably watching my every move. When I had packed all the things and planned to go down for a ride, the same feminine whisper in a sweet voice hit my hearing like a wave. Who incited me to take advantage of the delicacy of the situation, to tear the head of my master? What is the intention of Mr. Jamie? Where are you going? His sincere whisper was like hell. I gave the same answer as if I was talking to a real person. My mind burned like a furnace. Everything that had happened to me since morning was blamed on this object, which had dominated my skull and still wanted it. Couldn't get rid of it. My mind was confused with the idea of going to work here. I also admit that when my sir expressed hatred and contempt for my request for mercy, at that time my heart wanted to tear his head off, but all these things are limited to the extent of thinking. I had no intention to act. Even in my normal life, I'd always tried to stay away from fights and riots, even if it was someone else's fault, but I always followed the policy of forgiveness. It was no fault of mine to behave aggressively with my boss. All this mischief was from the same mysterious monster who was still present on my head and was addressing me at that time, and hearing whose voice I was very upset. Listen, are you afraid you will not leave this flat and this city and go anywhere else? The same mysterious whisper again echoed in my ears. This time his tone was a bit dry and bossy. It is as if your suggestion is that I should sit here calmly and wait for the police, and instead of thinking about my rescue, I should reach the border quietly. I now acknowledged his presence and started a regular conversation. He said, "Why are you panicking? I told you no. As long as I am on your head, I cannot harm you. What should I do, my God?" I held my head and sat on the bed, then swayed and said to this unseen force, "But who are you? Is it not possible that you should leave me?" He said, "Impossible, Jamie, sir." Then the same mysterious voice came in my ear. "I have come to your head of my own accord, and I will stay as long as I want. If you had accepted and taken possession of me after completing the chanting of a particular mantra, then I would have obeyed your command." What did I mean? I jumped in surprise. The conversation of Ramchand's mother was fresh in my mind, so I asked in a shy voice, "Who are you?" "My name is Daruka." You will remember that I told the same thing to Ramchand's mother, that I am not interested in amulets and witchcraft. I had heard stories from my elders when a person tried to overcome unseen forces and started reciting wazifa, but ended up either mixing it up or losing his mental balance. So, when I heard the name of Daruka, I broke out in sweat, thinking that I had been surrounded by an unseen power. My body was drenched in sweat from fear and terror. I was afraid and said, "Can there be any such situation that you choose someone else for yourself? This is also on my own accord. I don't need your advice," but I rejected Ramchand's mother's offer too. I humbly said that it was your wish, but what do you want from me? I asked quickly. For a moment I did not hear a whisper from the unseen force. I felt as if it was smiling at me. Then it seemed as if she sat down on my head again. I was suffering from this conflict. Why should I get rid of this torment? At the same time, I felt her voice emerging again. My proximity is a source of happiness. People desire me, some people want to get me. Dear, your worry is futile, your officer will not give any statement against you, nor will the police suspect you. Forget this incident. And talk happily. I'm with you. Now what's left to laugh and talk? You've got rid of the job. I got fed up and said it seems that my bad days are coming. Daruka said bad days can't come because of me. You don't need to worry and grieve. Getting a job is not easy. I got angry and said what I had to do for this job. He whispered, you are an intelligent and educated person, young, you can make gold out of clay. Hearing this talk of Daruka, I laughed, my heart wanted to start laughing. You are very scared, he whispered, is it difficult to earn rupees? Yes, it is very easy. I got angry and said that you have done all this. I said that cleverness is useless without capital. I will provide capital for you in that bid. Do not do anything against my will, do whatever I say, he said in a threatening tone. I remained silent, then she said again, are you interested in horse racing or not? You used to play it before. I wondered how he knew my interest. I had already repented from the race a year ago. The race had destroyed me, I said yes, but now I have repented. I know I will keep telling you the horse. What does it mean that you are winning the race? I asked very quickly. It means that I know everything, Daruka said with confidence. What is the benefit of Daruka staying with you? She said proudly. These magical things seemed to me as if I was sitting in a cinema hall watching a movie about a magic ring. But when I got interested in the race again, to confirm Daruka's words, my pockets were full of big notes.
I remember when I won the race, my pockets were full of notes. I was surprised. Why are you surprised, Jimmy? Sir Daruka's whisper emerged. Nothing is impossible for me. Whatever you wish from me will be fulfilled. But there is a condition for this, I asked with a beating heart. Daruka said, when the time comes, I will tell you. I am lost in this thought that I will become a great person with the help of Daruka. My anger and bitterness have completely disappeared, and the bitterness of my tone has also disappeared. As long as I am with you, you have to promise to be friends with me, I said without thinking. I agree. As a good friend, I will definitely fulfill whatever you ask me. But in return you have to do a task for me. She can't do it by herself. I promise. Think carefully, replied Daruka. And said, if you break your promise later, then our friendship will turn into enmity. It is also possible that I will harm you, I said to him. The turn will not come. I put the currency notes back in my pockets and said, I promise that I will do whatever you ask me to do. After Daruka's kindness, the panic in my mind slowly faded away. I had already trusted his assurance that the officer's head had been blown off by accident and that I would be safe even if it happened accidentally. Another reason for this confidence was the currency notes that were lying in my pocket at that time. I was sure that when Daruka's mysterious power could make me the owner of so much wealth, it could also shut the officer's tongue. My life became very calm. Things in my house kept increasing, and now I started to find life a little more interesting. I used to lie in bed and talk to Daruka very contentedly. Daruka told me that no one could hear his voice but me. But as far as seeing him was concerned, that was beyond my jurisdiction. I could only feel his movements. Tell me something. But I did not succeed in my intention. A couple of times I also wanted to ask what was the last thing for which she needed me, but every time she put me off by saying that it was not time for that work yet. I can't do it myself, I said quickly. What is it? She said, you promise me and I will tell you when the time comes. I said I promise. She said think carefully and understand. She said if you break your promise, our friendship will turn into enmity. It is also possible that I will harm you. It will not happen. I started keeping currency notes in my pockets again. I will do whatever you say. If I am caught, of course I will be safe even if it happens. Another reason for this confidence was the currency notes that were in my pocket at that time. If she could do that, she could stop the officer's tongue, so I thought it better to make friends with Derica instead of getting rid of him. I was very calm. It started to feel a little more interesting. It was my usual habit to lie on the bed and talk to Derica very contentedly. I could feel all kinds of movements during the conversation. I tried many times to get the magical girl to tell me about her personality and the secret of her existence, but I did not succeed in my intention. Twice I even wanted to ask what Derica needed from me, but each time Derica put me off by saying that the time had not yet come and I would know everything when the time came. I also did not think it proper to be too mysterious because I was afraid that Derica might get angry with me. As we talked late into the night and I began to fall asleep, I felt Derica trying to calm me down. After a while she fell asleep. She spoke in a charming way. Her sleeping style was also good. I find her every word so charming now. I feel the warmth of her body on my head. About 20 days passed with great peace and tranquility. Despite this short period, Derica and I developed a good friendship. In the morning, Derica had created a beautiful picture of a beautiful girl with an incomparable beauty on her face. Derica was very sharp-looking and always seemed very shy and innocent when she spoke, so we would spend hours together in our flat. I used to talk to the magical girl back and forth, even when we were out. If the magical girl spoke to me, I would answer in a low voice, avoiding people's eyes. Every wish would be fulfilled one after the other. Whatever the task, Derica would tell me the way to achieve it. Instead of ordinary clothes, I had the best suits to wear. I now ceased to breakfast at the hotel in front of me, but went to one of the higher hotels of the city, where the servants and waiters stood respectfully before me, and I ate with knife and fork. Now I didn't have to count the money while paying the bill, but now I used to tip 5 or 10 rupees with the bill. It became my routine to take a walk after dinner. In the evening I started going to civil lines area with great restriction where only big people could go. Common people and middle-class people used to not go there because they felt inferior seeing the personality of the people roaming there. Now I don't have such a problem.